Imposter syndrome? She faced it. Reinventing herself? Done that. Building community over competition? That's her mission. Welcome back to the TrailBLAZER pod. I'm your host Faye, and each week I bring you stories of Jewish women who are paving bold paths. This week's guest is Rachel Lubchansky. She shares how she went from Broadway dreams to entrepreneur and how she advocates for women in business and why supporting each other is the real power move. Let's dive in. Rachel, welcome to the TrailBLAZER pod. How are you?
Great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Hey,
Thank you. I'm always amazed at my guests from Israel because by 7 o'clock, or what time is it by you now? Five something?
it's 5.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock.
I wouldn't be able to record that late. So kudos to you. Thanks for joining me. So I like to start from the very, very beginning and go way back to your childhood. Can you explain what Rachel was like as a little girl? Like, what are some characteristics that you would use to describe yourself back then?
Gosh, I was thinking about this. I was dreamy. I think I was like
Mm,
a really playful kid. And I was also sensitive. I wasn't necessarily like uber confident, but I think I came off as having a lot of confidence. Like I had a
interesting.
lot of energy. I think I wanted to be seen and heard, and so sort of put myself out there. I also started singing at a young age, so I think I like naturally sort of gravitated towards like being the center of attention,
Mm,
even though I'm not so sure I loved it. But that's kind of what I remember
that's
of
so
myself
interesting.
from back then.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have two
Where
sisters
are
and
you?
two older sisters. Yeah, two
Okay.
older sisters and a younger brother.
Okay, so because sometimes they say like the middle child, like they feel a little bit like they're lost in, the whole thing of all their siblings around them, and so they find different ways of, like you're saying, putting themselves in the center of attention to make sure that they're seen and not lost. That's why I was asking. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I totally think I had some sort of like a case of middle child syndrome. And that's a little bit of how it manifested itself.
Interesting. I think though that's brave. Like if you were shy inside, but you still put yourself out there, that's like a skill that people learn the hard way, I feel like later on in their life. It's cool that you had that from a very young age.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think as we get into our conversation, you'll hear that it kind of went away for a while, but
Mm,
yeah, it's something that we can definitely intentionally cultivate.
yeah. I think a lot of us will be able to relate, like the skills or the bravery that we had as kids. They go away and then you have to find them again. And then you realize, like, wait, this was always inside me, but somehow blocked it. For everyone, it looks different, but I think we can all relate to that in some sort of way. So I'm excited to get into that part. Obviously,
Yay.
Jewish podcast for Jewish women. So can you share a little bit about how Judaism played a role in your life growing up and how it influenced, the women you are today sitting with us?
Yes, I grew up in a very strong Jewish home. So we had a lot of traditional practices. I didn't necessarily go to Jewish day school past like first grade, but I grew up in a home where we celebrated and honored Shabbat in our own way every week. Like I wasn't allowed to go out on Friday nights when I got to high school or even Shabbat afternoon. We went to shul or synagogue, as some of your listeners might call it, every week, and we would walk there if it was nice weather, but we were like fair weather fans in terms of driving versus walking.
Mm,
We would drive if it were raining, walk if it weren't. But ultimately, shul was like the first community that I remember being a part of. It was like one big family, and it was a really special, happy, joyful place for me. And then I also went to Jewish summer camp, which was
mm.
amazing. I went to Camp Ramah of Wisconsin. So Judaism was like a very strong thread throughout my entire childhood.
That's beautiful. I grew up very religious, and for me, summer camp was just another extension of school. So it's always interesting for me to hear people who grew up maybe more traditional, less religious, that summer camp was like their real connection to Judaism. Very different than my own experience. So I only learned this as an adult. Like I'm almost 30 and I'm learning about people's experience with summer camp. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize summer camp had this effect on people because I didn't have that at all?
Yeah, it truly was a magical place, like a place that you could connect with Jewish children from across the country,
Mm,
from different kinds of communities, and then keep up those friendships throughout the year. I
yeah.
remember when it was my bat mitzvah, some of my friends from camp came to my bat mitzvah, and when it was theirs, I went to theirs, and it was a really special place.
That's amazing. Well, Let's take 16, 17. What did you envision your career would look like if you wanted a career? Not everyone thinks about that at that age.
I did. My entire childhood, I grew up wanting to become a Broadway singer. And that was what I
Wow.
believed always that I was going to do. I literally wrote essays about it. I talked about it.
Oh my
I
gosh.
trained for it. So that was the path that I was on as a teenager.
And what ended up happening? Like, take us through, graduating high school and then the choices that you made from there.
Yeah, this is so fun talking about this because I'm actually writing a book right now. And in the
Ooh.
part of my book that I was just working on yesterday is like this season of life. So in my teenage years, I dreamed of becoming a singer, and I it was interesting because I really didn't love being on the stage. I did some community theater and very, very little performing, but a lot of training.
Mm.
I worked with the best vocal coaches in St. Louis, and my parents would drive me. Like this one coach that I worked with for years, she lived probably an hour away, almost an hour away. And I went every week, and my parents invested a lot of money in my training. But I was resistant to performing. And at the time, I didn't know what that was about. But it was clearly like some sort of a seed of self doubt that
Mm.
sunk in. And so it became time for college, and I just figured, okay, I'm going to go for vocal performance. This is what I've been working towards my entire life. But it was interesting because there was still like this tension. I wasn't confident enough to apply to some of the great music programs across the country. It was like, I don't know. I kind of believed that I was good and had potential, but
Mm.
also kind of didn't. So I ended up going to the University of Missouri at Columbia called Mizzou. And I entered and was admitted into their music program. And the first year of college, I had a super fun year. Like, I joined a sorority, which is hilarious
Mm.
to people who know me today. They're like, you're so not a sorority girl. But I had a really fun year. But I was in a master class one day with these two other young women who are a year older than me. And they were performing and then told us actually that they were moving to New York
Mm.
and leaving the school. And as I was listening to them both sing as well as share what their plans were, I was, who am I to be here in this music
Mm.
school? Like, I'm not clearly not taking this seriously. I don't think I have that much potential. If they're going to New York and, hopefully the short track to Broadway, like there's just no question that that's
Wow.
not going to be for me. And so I really let this imposter syndrome, which I
Mm.
didn't obviously know what it was called at the time, but I let imposter syndrome steal my voice.
Wow.
And I decided there and then in my second semester of freshman year to leave Mizzou and to take some time off and figure out what I wanted to do. So, fast forward, I did take that year. I found fashion, I found a real passion for it, and it seemed like a really fun industry. I applied to the Fashion Institute of Technology, FIT, in Manhattan, and I was accepted there. So then the following year, which would have been my junior year, I moved to New York City.
It's so funny that you hear the story about the girls going to New York and somehow you ended up in a different trajectory. It's Life is funny that way. But I'm
Isn't that
curious.
crazy?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really funny. Looking back now, and I'm sure you'll talk about this in your book, which is cool. I didn't know you're working on one. How do you feel about that imposter syndrome taking over almost? Like, do you see it now as a blessing in disguise? Do you wish that you had a little bit more clarity on what that feeling was and that it's normal to feel that? Like, what are your thoughts about it now?
Yeah, all of the above. I definitely think, I don't know if I would call it a blessing in disguise, but it was certainly the path that was meant for
Mm-hmm.
me. I had to go through the process of experiencing that self-doubt. I had to go through the process of moving to New York because ultimately living in New York is what gave me the energy and the confidence in a way to pursue my next dreams, like what
Mm-hmm.
became my next dreams. And I know we'll probably get into talking about like my first business.
Yeah.
But had I not had those experiences, then I wouldn't be who I am today. And
Yeah.
ultimately, there's been a full circle moment for me. And I think, we can use our failures or our challenges really to fuel us forward if we choose to. But
Yeah.
it's really about getting intentional about it and utilizing it for growth. So you can decide in that moment to like give up on everything, or you can choose a different path. And I think, we can't make sense of everything in the moment. But in retrospect, yeah, for sure, I feel like it all happened exactly how it was supposed to.
Yeah. I like that you said, your second dream or another dream, because I think sometimes, people, I didn't grow up this way where I had this dream of, becoming a singer or dancer. I was like, what am I going to do? Right. But a lot of people do. And they always talk about the struggle of like when they lose it, whether it's because they chose to pursue a different path or, people in sport, they get hurt, they can no longer do the thing they wanted to do. And it's very hard to be able to pivot and realize like that's not the end of the world in life for you. There's ways to basically find new passions or new dreams. I like the word dream. I think it's something that a lot of people go through because we're always told like, oh, this person had this dream from 7 years old and look what she created, right? And you're like comparing it to that. And you're like, why could she stick with her dream and then like mine didn't work out? So I think it's really important. The other thing is that sometimes we talk about sticking with the thing, right? Like there's strength in just sticking it out and like going through the hard times and doing whatever you got to do. And people don't talk about the flip side of like knowing when to quit something. Like knowing when to quit is not a failure. It's actually a skill that we have to learn. Like if it's not serving you, if it's not right for you, the faster you do that, like my husband always says, like fail quickly. The faster you do that, the quicker you can find something else that you're really interested or whatever your calling is, right? So are you going to talk about this in your book?
Oh yeah, all of
Okay.
this. Yeah. I
Okay. We're
think,
good.
I mean, because at 17, at 18, at 19, like I didn't know these concepts then,
Yeah.
but it all makes sense now, like looking back. And I think it is really difficult to sort of close one door and
Yeah.
believe that another one will open to us, right? And to close
Yeah.
that door before we know for sure that another
Right.
one will open to us.
Right.
But that's part of being a person of
Yeah.
faith, which I wouldn't say I like not from a place of religiosity, but just a person of faith, like believing that things are happening for me, happening for us, and that it all builds upon itself to get us to
Yeah.
where we're meant to be.
Yeah. So at what point did you feel that like push and desire to create, something for like your own business? Where did that come from?
Okay, so I started out, as I mentioned, in the New York fashion industry.
Mm.
So I went to FIT. I graduated from there with a degree in integrated marketing communications with an emphasis in fashion. And so I was working in public relations and marketing and then doing buying and merchandising for a high-end shoe designer. And I really loved the fashion industry. I didn't love sort of some of the culture of it,
Mm.
but it was like a place where I felt like I could come alive. I loved,
Yeah.
I don't know, there was just like so many parts of it that I thought were so fun that I could really make a career of that. But then I left New York and I moved back to St. Louis, my hometown, and that's where I became a little bit more religiously observant.
Mm.
And during that time, I started realizing that I was not going to be able to find clothing that was more modest in St. Louis that I was going to
Mm.
like. And so I'm like, well, I can't keep flying back to Manhattan to shop, and to fill my wardrobe. And so I just realized that if it was this hard for me, there must be other people in smaller communities in
Mm.
smaller towns that weren't coastal that had
Right.
the same challenge. And so really it just sort of came to me the seed of an idea of here's an untapped niche. I'm just going to
Yeah.
fill that. And when you're 25 years old and you really don't have sort of the fear factor
Right.
that you develop as you get older. You don't think about the consequences as intensely as you
Yeah.
would maybe, or you wouldn't weigh your options as much. And so I just sort of went for it. Like I
Wow.
didn't even think about it deeply. I was like, here's an opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm suited to fill this. Don't ask me how. Don't ask me how I'm going to do it. I will figure it out along the way. But I just believed that I would.
Yeah. There's like this certain like I guess innocence, right? I would say rather innocence when you're younger that I always think I'm like, what would little Faye do? Because I was very brave back then. I didn't think of anything except for I want to do this. And I think sometimes you have to tap back into that little like that younger version of yourself. I very much relate to what you're saying. But you really were the target audience and you were the right person to do this because of your background, which is a really cool like connection there. Not everyone has both those parts of that. You created this, you grew it, and you sold it, right? How old were you when you sold your business?
I was just shy of 31.
Yeah. And I want to say this because I think, when you hear somebody like they started their college career off one way and then they took us like they paused and they were trying to like figure out what's their next step. Sometimes when you're that age, you think this is going to ruin my whole life. Like if I'm taking this year off, like I don't have the head start that I need. And then I think listening to people like you being able to grow and sell a company at such a young age while taking that year off is something that we need to hear more of. Like I think people need to hear how different career paths and college paths and university paths look, because it's not, I think it's not copy paste, right? Like you can make it work for you no matter what.
Totally. And it's just not true of our generation. And you and I might actually be in different generations, but we won't tell your listeners that. It's it's not true though of these generations that people like set out to do one thing and then they do that thing for life.
Yeah.
Like my parents did,
Yeah.
perhaps your parents. My husband actually is in the same job that he was in the day he graduated from college. He's been there
Wow.
for I think 24 years. It's very
Wow.
unusual. I don't think
Yeah.
any of our other friends are in the same at the same company. I shouldn't say he's at the same job at the same company. Really, this is like all about evolving
Yeah.
and growing. And I heard somebody say earlier this week, the only way you can fail is to stop. As
Mm.
long as you keep going, you don't fail. Like there's no, I've done this wrong. I can't get out of this. There's always a way to reinvent yourself, to utilize what you've learned along the way, to utilize the skills that you've gained and use them for something else. And it really just takes an open mind and a little bit of courage, perhaps, and seeking the right support and mentorship around us to make it happen. When
Yeah.
I started my first business, which was called Funky From, there were no business coaches. There were
Yeah.
no like women's networking groups. There was no podcasting. We didn't have online marketing at the time. So I literally had to create my network and create my support system from the ground up.
Yeah.
But that's just what you did, right? And I think like really the same principles all apply today.
What did you learn about yourself in that journey? You know, we're going from the girl who loved singing, wasn't sure she was the right person to perform, to this woman who really, from start to finish, made something happen for herself. Like, what did you discover?
Okay. I mean, what didn't I learn about myself? First and foremost, it took becoming a business owner to find my voice. That
Mm,
was where my true voice sang most like purely.
wow.
So it was sort of this like full circle moment, and I've had others along the
Hmm.
way which I can share as well, but that was the first thing. Another thing was that the only thing standing between us and our dreams is fear. That's
Mm,
it. It's just fear. We are the ones who are holding ourselves back, and we are the ones who exhibit these inhibitions and sort of keep us stuck. But if we can master that fear, then we become unstoppable.
yeah.
And that's the feeling I led with. I led with, not in an arrogant way, but I just led with this feeling of there's no fear and anything is possible. And so I would say
Wow.
those are probably the two biggest things.
Yeah, and they're massive things. Let's pick apart the first one for a second. What do you think about why do you think business or having your own business is what led you to find your voice? Like, just talk to me about the pieces there that led to that.
Yeah, I think growing up, I talked about this a little bit at the beginning of our conversation, but there was some semblance, like there was something in there that was a seed of a doubt about myself, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it was where I fit into my family, maybe it was making people around me proud, maybe
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what it was. Certainly I grew up in a high achieving family where there was a pretty clear picture of what success was. And I wasn't sure how I was going to get there. And
Right.
so I think this business was the first time where I felt like I was in a spot that I had to created. It was a
Mm.
spot of my own where I shined brighter than I ever had. I
Wow.
felt like I was capable. I could contribute, right? I was solving things for other people. I was helping people. I felt like I was learning and growing and resourceful. And so it really
Wow.
it, when I talk about the concept of like finding my voice, it's like I found who I was in a basically for the first time ever.
That's so
And
cool.
I mean, it was unbelievable.
Wow. And it's so special because it happened at a pretty young age for you, you know? For me personally, I feel like every couple of years I go through another version. Like you strip the layers of like, oh, I thought I already figure that out and then you learn more, which you're saying also you had a couple of like full circle moments, right? But I think it's really, really cool that you kind of dove headfirst into this and then you were able to build this like really solid foundation for the coming years and obviously what you're doing now, right? Very, very direct link over there. We'll talk about that in a second. But I'm not a mom, like I mentioned. So I want to just, talk to you about this topic because I hope to be a mom one day, but I'm also, a woman in business and it's a scary thought for me at least. You became pregnant at the height of this chapter in your life. What was that moment for you? Like let's talk about even before having, your kids. Like, when you become pregnant when you're at the height of like something that's just, the momentum is crazy. Or like you found yourself, were you nervous? Were you scared? Like what were the feelings?
Yes, all of those. It was quite surreal. First of all, because I became pregnant with triplets.
Yeah, no
I,
biggie.
my husband and I had no big deal. I had been trying to get pregnant for almost 5 years at the time. So it was actually almost the entire duration that of that business.
Wow, okay.
And, initially I just assumed before I got pregnant, okay, I'll get pregnant, I'll have a baby like everybody else does, and I'll just keep working. Maybe I'll take a
Yeah,
maternity leave, I'll bring in some additional help in the business, but I'll just hop back on. And you know what? It's cool because I already have my own business. That means I make my own hours. This is
right.
totally going to work for me. And then I found out that there were three. And I mean, there's nothing like lying in the ultrasound chair, when they tell you that there are
Oh my goodness.
three babies growing inside of you. Yeah, it's pretty surreal. I said two things in the doctor's office that day, literally moments after they told me I was pregnant with triplets, that they had seen three on the ultrasound. I said, oh my gosh, to my husband, we have to sell the business and buy a minivan.
Oh my
And
God.
6.5 months later, we sold the business and we bought a
Empire.
minivan.
That is so cute. It's such a like it's just surreal, but it's also so sweet like that you're like this is my next step, which, I think as, moms, that's you know what you have to do. What do you think about the word balance? I ask this of all my guests who, juggle different roles or different buckets in their life. Do you like that word?
I don't. I mean,
Okay.
I just don't really know what it means. The only thing I picture when somebody says the word balance is one of those old school scales, that
Hmm.
like literally like you put the different weights on the one side
Yeah.
and you try to balance it out. And I just feel like that's not real life. I mean, in my work now, I talk a lot about work-life integration. And
Mm,
certainly when I'm working with other small business owners, I talk about building a life first business. And that means building something that works for you, that
mm,
allows you to maintain your highest priorities and keep them at the forefront and build something that's going to serve you, not drain you, not take from you, but
yeah.
really support the life that you're building. So for me, I mean, going back to those early days, like when I was pregnant even and then gave birth to my children, it just felt really intuitive at the time to
Yeah.
just let Funky From go and to just focus in one area. And I think that that's true of life overall, is that there are times when we can manage that integration more seamlessly than we can other times. And sometimes it means that we just need to let something
Right.
go and that we need to step away from something. So, yeah, so I have a hard time with that term overall.
It's really funny because a lot of high achieving women I talk to hate the word balance and they use the same word as you, which is
That's so
integration.
interesting.
Yeah, which is why I asked because
Mm.
I'm like trying like I'm finding a thread from the women that I talk to, which is so I mean, I'm lucky to be in this position where I get to learn from people just by, having them on the podcast. Um okay, from that moment, you sell your business, you have triplets, mind blowing. What like led you to, this interest, the spark about women's like empowerment, helping women in their business, helping women grow? When you talk about helping women in business, I know that it's a 360 picture, right? You can't thrive in your business without, doing the personal and internal work. Where did that come from for you?
Okay, so around the time my kids were 7, we
Hmm.
moved our family to Denver, Colorado. And it was at that time that I said to my husband, I want to start another business, but I don't
Mm,
exactly know what I want to do. And I was one of these people who felt at this point in my life, I felt like, okay, I have a lot of skills and I have a lot of different directions that I could take my career, but I'm just not sure how to figure out what the right one
yeah.
is. And so I didn't know a lot of people in Denver. So I started just reaching out to people to learn more about the community and the network there and kind of just hear what the needs were. And so through that, I started hearing and sharing my story with people as they would share theirs. And I started hearing from woman after woman, like, how did you start that business? How did
Yeah.
you know what to do? I would love to do that. It would be amazing if I could work on my own time and terms and do work that's more meaningful or
Yeah.
fulfilling. I want to be contributing more. So these were the kinds of things that people were saying. And so it just became really obvious to me over a few months that that was my next path, that I wanted
Wow.
to turn that experience of finding my own voice in business and really utilizing business as the vehicle to realizing our own potential and help other women to launch and grow businesses that would do the same thing for them.
Like something that I'm noticing with you is like you have this intuition and you go with it. And I think again another theme I'm noticing is that, a lot of us we have very strong gut feelings and intuitions, and a lot of us ignore them because it's not maybe always the rational or practical or pragmatic thing to do. And that's why I think I have this podcast, is because I think I want young women to listen and be like, oh, I have that feeling in my stomach. This woman went for it and it worked out. It could work out. We need to take these inspirations from, some would call it brave and some would call it like I felt like I had no other choice, right? It was screaming so loudly to me that I was like, I had to follow it. Which one was it for you? Was it that?
It was the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't ever feel like, I mean, we don't have enough time for me to go into like all the dirty parts of my story that
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
help shape me, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
the major
Part two.
challenges and roadblocks. Part 2, you're on, Faye. But I definitely have learned to listen to my intuition,
Yeah.
and it has served me really well, but it's not always easy to explain to people on the outside.
Right.
When we moved our family to Denver, I literally had just this feeling one day, like,
Yeah.
you know what? We can leave St. Louis now. Like, we can leave.
Yeah.
I was leaving
Yeah.
behind 4 parents. My parents are divorced and remarried. We were leaving
Wow.
behind 4 parents and a set of grandparents. I mean, who takes their children away from that? But I had this like calling. I
Mm.
knew that was my next place. And it's like, wow. Cause then I built this business there. I built
Right.
another business as well. I founded a women's entrepreneur community and conference there and brought like hundreds of women together to support one another in business.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just not easy to explain when you have these intuitive hits to somebody else, like, because it's not always rational.
Right.
The same thing happened when we moved to Israel.
Yeah.
You can't make sense of moving to Israel on paper, it just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
But wow, incredible decision for our family.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say, is that it's very clear that this is something that you keep listening to. You keep listening to your intuition, which is I think it's really beautiful. But, you did mention the dark side. I want to just go a little bit into, you talked about one of the articles or something that you had somewhat of a negative experience in New York City with like people backstabbing and that kind of stuff. We don't have to go too much into it, but I want to know what that taught you in terms of like what kind of culture you want to create. You build this community of women, like you're saying, and how that led to the way you led and build communities.
Absolutely. At my very first Rise Together Women's Conference, I stood on the stage and there were 150 women in front of me, most of whom had never seen me before. I had never met them. And I said, we are here as a community to rise together. We are here to support one another. There is zero competition in this space. This is all about you bringing your gifts and your
Yeah.
wisdom into a community that you can share with other people and they will share as well. I call it the give and get, right? When you
Mm.
show up and you give of yourself and your time and your talents and your wisdom, and then you ask for what it is that you want and need to receive as well. And that is who I am. I
Yeah.
fundamentally don't believe in competition. I think each of us has our role, our space, our gifts, our unique expression of
Yeah.
who we are and the way that we do things. I actually just had a call with another business coach, strategist earlier today, and she and I were talking about she focuses more on the scaling space. I focus more on foundations and growth. And to the outside person, they might
Yeah.
think we are in competition with one
Right.
another, but we're not. And so that was a feeling that I had in New York that I never wanted to experience again. This like
Wow.
cutthroat energy where everybody's out for themselves. I wanted to cultivate and I continue to want to cultivate a space where everybody gets to leverage their own gifts and leverage their lived experience and their wisdom and grow into their own potential and that we help each other do that, because I think, first of all, that's what helps each of us get to where we want and need to be. But also it just makes our world such a beautiful place, and it's really what we need. I mean, in a time of such hardship, we just need more people supporting one another and living their brightest light. And I
Yeah.
think that when they can do that, when each of us can do that, then we just make this world a kinder, brighter place to live. And that's certainly the kind of place I want to live in.
Yeah, I'm smiling because it's just so sweet and it's something I'm noticing amongst, maybe it's our like Jewish values or whatever, but anyone I talk to, I feel like there's no sense of competition with like the women that I talk to, I have on here and the communities they're building. It's everyone is I think maybe it's because we're taught that as young kids, like you have your mission, you're here for your reason, right? And there's room for everybody. And like even you have a podcast, I have a podcast, but we're like, we talk about very specific things. There's room for both of us. And I think like in a world of like AI and whatever, things are going to start looking a lot more copy paste, right? And like the way we stand out is by being very much our own person, like fully. And when you do that, how can you be the same, right? How can you be competition if you're so uniquely yourself? So I love that you say that. Yeah. Okay. When you're working with women in business specifically, what do you notice are some of like the biggest challenges or hurdles that they're trying to get over when they want to start something? So let's say it's still in the idea stage or still in the hope stage. What do you see the most?
Yeah, I would say the most common thing that I see is I'm an expert at this, but it's not the business side of things. So
Mm,
they're being held back because they know that they have a lot to offer within their industry or their field, but they don't feel confident about how
mm,
to run the business, how to set up the business, how to
yeah.
run it, how to get clients, how to market themselves. Most people early in their businesses, and with the kind of business owners I work with, they say things like, I hate sales, or I hate marketing myself. I don't like to talk
Yeah.
about myself. But when we work through some of the reframes that I bring to our sessions, then they start to see how it's really an exchange of value relative to what people are looking for. But generally, people are just held back by the thing that they don't know. And they
Right.
expect, because they're smart women who do have an expertise in some area, they just expect that they should know everything about everything, right? It's like,
Yes.
did you get on your bike the first time and just start riding?
All right.
Now, anytime I use that example, I'm like, wait, but one of my kids kind of did that. But no, people don't do that. Like
Right.
you start with training wheels, right?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
learn how to pedal first, and then you learn how to move it even further, right? And then you take off the training wheels, and then your
Right.
parent maybe still holds the back of the bike. Like, so I think it's like this unreasonable expectation that we have. And then
Mm,
that's where a lot of the mind drama comes in, because
right.
people are then like, well, if I don't know how to do that, then maybe I'm just not cut out for it.
Right.
And that's not the truth. It's just a new skill and something that they have to cultivate.
Yeah, I love that metaphor with the bike. I can very much relate. I'm like that. I am like, if I don't know how to do it, that means I'm never gonna be good at it. It's, just a narrative that you have to break through. And there's like a study, and I always get the actual data wrong, but like when men see a job description and they fit one of the boxes, they apply, and women, they fit 9 out of 10, but they're missing one, they don't apply, right? It's like that concept of like, if I don't got the full package, if I can't do it from day one, I guess it's not meant for me, right? And it's like there's just like this silly narrative that we build up in our heads that we just have to be I think we have
Yes.
to ignore. We have to start anyway. Like you were saying when you had your first business, like you had no fear, and that's amazing, but a lot of us do have fear, and I think something that we can teach women is you do it with the fear. Like there is no problem with having fear. Just do it
Absolutely.
anyway, right?
Totally. That's a normal human emotion. And I think
Yeah.
we make it a problem that we're scared. It's like,
Yeah.
no,
Right.
or like going through things with my kids now. I'm like, you could do hard things. It's okay that it's
Yeah.
hard. You could do that, right?
Yeah.
Just because it's hard doesn't mean you don't do it or you give up.
Yeah, I love that. So on the flip side, what are some of the strengths that you think women have in business? Like what are like some of the unique aspects that we have that we can tap into?
Wow. Well, first of all, we're empathetic. So I think
Yeah.
that we connect with each other. I think this idea of being in community with one another feels very
Mm,
natural for us to support one another.
yeah.
Maybe decades ago, it was more like the energy of women in business was like women in a men's world,
Right.
where they were trying to like fit in. But I think now we really have this unique gift of being in community with one another. Some other things are an interest in growth. Like I
Right.
think we're maybe introspective on a different level. I don't know if
Yeah.
there's any data around this or if this is just a story I've told myself, but it's certainly something that I've seen in my work
Yeah.
is like a willingness and a desire to keep leveling up, to keep developing skills, to keep becoming more of ourselves and learning and in tune with ourselves in a way that's going to further our mission in life and in business.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with everything you're saying. Again, it might just be observation. It would be interesting to see if there was a study, but I agree that we're always looking for ways to better ourselves. Doesn't mean that men aren't.
We could like bring a lot of heart to the work that we do.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I don't know if it's something I need to struggle with or not, but there's like a blurred line with my clients sometimes. I'm
Oh,
like, are you friend? Are you client first? Like, of
interesting.
course they are clients. They are clients, but because we get so
Mm,
friendly, like I genuinely care about them as
yeah.
people, as women, you know, as friends. And so I think that that's also unique to women that we can hold that space that doesn't feel like we have to fit into one title or
Right.
one box, but we can actually like play this role or, you know, wear these multiple hats in a way that is really unique to us.
Yeah. I was had this woman on who like helps teach women how to basically pitch themselves. She does it broader for companies to pitch themselves, but I asked her, when women gets asked like, do you plan on having kids when she's a female founder by investors, whatever, how do you answer that? And she brought up this really good point of like, I've watched women who are business owners with kids and they learn this incredible skill of multitasking and wearing multiple hats and they become so good at it and that translates directly into running a company, right? And so it's really about all these like reframing this stuff that might be like looked at like barriers to its actually strengths, which is exactly what you're saying, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I want to quickly just talk about your podcast, just so because, podcast to podcast, like where can people find you? What is it called? What do you focus on?
Okay, it's called Small Business Growth Made Simple, and you could find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And I talk about all things small business, from business models and marketing to mindset. And then I do a combination of solo episodes and interview other awesome women so that they could share their story, because I do think that there's so much power in hearing from other women, you know, and really pulling back the curtain on the real behind the
Yeah.
scenes of what it looks like to grow a business. That is, you know, the glorious, beautiful parts, the excitement, the wins, but also the hardship and
Yeah.
what it really takes to persist.
Yeah. I think that's so, so important. And I think a lot of times you scroll on LinkedIn and you only see like this person sold their company and like all the good things, and you don't see enough of how did you actually get there? Like, how about all the nights that you stayed
Yeah.
up, like stressing about it? So I'm glad your podcast exists. I'm going to put it in the link. Excited for people to listen to
Thanks
it.
so much.
I want to end off by asking you, like, if you could speak to, let's say, the version of you that was like thinking of taking that year off in college now, what would you tell her? If you would tell her anything.
I would tell her you're on to something. Like I know that
Mm.
you're shattering all sorts of expectations at the
Mm.
moment, but don't stop. Keep going in pursuit of the right path for you. And most of all, remember that the path to success isn't all about what you learn or what you do. It's about who you become.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you, Faye. This was a really fun conversation.